Now we make noise.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
You are, in fact, watching The Dorkening.
You're watching The Dorkening. Stay tuned.
For all the geek news everywhere. Dorkening.
And this is The Dorkening. Trust me, I'm smarter than these guys.
Because The Dorkening is the best and most educational entertainment and information source that the Trauma Team knows of. It's the best. The Dorkening.
Hey, everybody. It's Tuesday night, and welcome to Splash Pages. I am Carrie. I am going to be your Fleo, fake Leo, and the Cthulhu behind the keyboard for the show tonight. We have got an awesome show set up. We have some great news. We have an amazing guest. And let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go and how's it going, Jeremy?
I'm here. There I am. Hey, it's Tuesday night. Splash Pages. I'm ready. We've got a really big show with a great guest tonight, and I can't wait for him to be introduced. Over to you, Drew. Did I do that right? I did.
Yes, you did. And I'm here. And although I am sick, I am still here because it's Tuesday night. And I'm extremely excited that we have a wonderful guest. A writer of over 1,000 comics, a DC editor who's worked with some of the greats. But I'll let Velvet Joker finish that.
Velvet.
Hey guys, it's Tuesday night on the award-winning Splash Pages, and we do have a great guest tonight, as everyone said. The great, the amazing, the Brooklyn-born Paul Kupperberg. As Drew said, writer of over 1,000 DC stories. Everything from Supergirl, Vigilante, Peacemaker, Action Comics, Doom Patrol, Green Lantern, The Brave and the Bold Showcase, Ghost, Star Trek, Aquaman, Adventure Comics, and more. And we're going to meet him tonight, and we're going to get deep into his crazy mind. Hi, Paul.
Hello, Rich. How you doing?
That's good, man. Great to see you. Nice to see you still kicking.
Good to be seen.
What's going on? What's new and exciting in the world of Paul Kupperberg?
Nothing. Just working along, plugging along on the newest project, and trying to get that done and put together in time to get a Kickstarter off the ground and make it so.
All right. Well, do you want to tell us a little bit about that new project?
Oh, I'll tell you a little bit. It's another book of interviews, following up on direct comments and direct conversations, which are books I published in the last couple of years. Direct comments was some 1990s vintage interviews I had conducted for DC Comics coming attractions, direct the comic shop giveaway newsletter. And so I had about 24 of those from the old days, that transcripts of those interviews that survived. So I edited and annotated them and published them. And after that, I sat down and talked with a bunch of old pals from the 70s to talk about the days when we got into comics and, what brought us into it and what it was like, the DC Comics of 1975. What was that place like?
I've heard stories of
human
flop houses.
sacrifice. Yes,
True. Human sacrifices. Because
Jack Adler. Well, anyway, go ahead.
A lot of comic guys used to all shack up in the same apartments and stuff in apartment buildings. Were you part of that?
I wasn't part of that per se, but my brother was. He kind of followed around Howard Chaykin and Walt Simonson and Al Milgram. All those guys kind of congregated together. There was a couple of apartment buildings on Albemarle Road. I forget the name of the street. But they, that they all lived in or shared apartments in, and then they moved to Queens, I think it was. So yeah, there was a lot of that.
Cool.
I was just one of the interviews I was editing today. We were talking about those days when everybody could, you could just walk in the door at DC Comics or Marvel for that matter. And if they knew you walk past the receptionist and you just hung out. There was a coffee room in the old DC, and in the slightly less older DC, there was a couch at the end of the hallway and a vending machine, as I recall. So it was luxurious. But yeah, people used to hang out. You'd walk in and there'd be back in the early and mid 70s, it was. Guys like Chaykin and Wrightson and Starlin and whoever else was around, Simonson, Kaluta. It was just a club.
Oh man, that's got to be some great stories in those books, then.
I would like to think so.
I'm assuming the reception from the first one went well, Paul. That you're doing a second one.
Yeah, well, it's actually the third one. Yeah, this one I'm talking to. It's a different subject, but it's all got to do with going back to the roots of the things that brought us to comics. The people, and the things we read and saw as kids. So it's interesting. There's a lot of common ground in what attracted us to this stuff. It's kind of understandable how we formed, these geek squads, because we really do have, despite our differences, we really do have a lot of common ground.
Wow, very cool. Now, Paul, going back into some of your history, you did a DC Comics Present number 52. You had scripted the first appearance of Keith Giffen, who we had on the show 3 weeks ago. It's Ambush Bug.
Right.
Now, we learned on that show that Keith considers himself Ambush Bug, and Cheeks was his son. What was your interaction with Keith like?
Just fine. It was. We were sitting in Julie Schwartz's office plotting an issue of DC Comics Presents, and Keith was, sitting in on the plotting conference, which was kind of unusual for those days. So usually, it was usually the writer and the editor would work out the story, depending on the books. There was always exceptions like Len Wein and Bernie Wrightsman on Swamp Thing when they worked on things together. But anyway, Keith was hanging out with us. And we were looking for an antagonist for the story. And Keith said, well, I've got this character. And he basically described him as Bugs Bunny with a teleportation device.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought, cool, yeah, I'll write that. So, yeah, totally Keith's character.
Yeah. So, Paul, so you've worked with the industry like quite a while, and you really watched it change. From this, from when you started in the 60s, 70s to now when you're still a part of it. So, and you've also been not only a writer, but you've also been on the editorial side. So you kind of, you kind of were like the actor who then was also like an assistant director or a director, kind of in that creative room. So what are like the big differences there, that I guess people don't know about?
Well, when you're a creator, you can sit there and go, I'm an artist. And when you're an editor, you can sit there and go, shut up, give me the script. It's fantasy versus reality.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's there, you need a certain, practical side to which I don't know where I found it, but there it was.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been a lot of brilliant editors who couldn't meet a schedule, couldn't meet a deadline to save their lives. But, it is part of the job. It's not like you really have to sacrifice one for the other. It's, you're doing a commercial art job, and, there's an expectation that you'll meet the deadline. And I've also been on the business side of things. I worked in licensed publishing and in licensing as well. So, I really got to see all aspects of the job, which was very interesting, because when you're dealing from a licensing point of view, the creative, the everything that you care about as a writer or editor is irrelevant. It's like, does that picture look good on a package of underwear?
Sure.
I like that.
You got to be practical,
I've got a question about DC Comics Presents number 47.
I have the power.
You are kind of, you've given the origin to He-Man and all this. You also wrote the DC miniseries. I forget what the title of it was, but 1 through 3. But you're not given any credit in any documentary. I'm a huge He-Man fan.
Huge.
And they never say Paul Kupperberg pretty much wrote the backstory for He-Man.
I've kind of noticed that. I mean, it's not my world really, so it's I haven't looked too deeply into it. But I did watch some documentary, The Toys That Made Us, I think it was.
Yeah.
And they did a whole episode on Masters of the Universe. And the guy who created the characters is sitting there under a framed triptych of the covers of my miniseries.
Right.
I know.
At no point does DC Comics or I come up in the conversation. So, I feel
and they even predate the cartoon. So
yes, what happened? I mean, I've written about this, but Dave Manick was given the assignment as editor, and I'd been working with him on a lot of Green Lantern stuff, so he picked me to do this to do the comic, and this guy came from Mattel, or Mattel, right? Yeah,
Yep.
came from Mattel, and, and he brought this big box, of loose toys. It was all prototypes, Castle Skeletor and He-Man and all that stuff. And Dave and I kind of sat in the conference room floor and played with it. And they said, here's what we want. And I said, well, what's the backstory? The guy said, yeah, I don't know, make something up. So,
Okay.
that was it. That was so I made something up. I mean, I don't know how much of it survived into the cartoons and all that. So because I never really watched that stuff afterwards because I was a grown up.
Well, it's because of you that most of those cartoons were made, I think, in some regards.
And I want some money.
Yeah, for real.
I mean, hey, listen, if Jerry Singer could finally get credit for Batman, maybe there's hope for you getting credit for He-Man.
Yeah. I'm going to start holding my breath now.
No, please, we need you to do more. So
you have to talk to an attorney, Paul.
It's all right.
So, Paul, you worked with a lot of great moments in DC and Marvel, a lot of great runs and such. Do you ever know, like, I know it's just writing comics, but do you ever think like these stories are going to become pivotal to a character? They're going to be considered iconic, best, and then years later you're looking like, yeah, I was there. Like, did you ever have? I mean, you on the book we reviewed, Super Powers. You worked with Jack Kirby. I mean, like,
yeah. Well, working. And I also say this frequently. When I say I worked with Jack Kirby, I mean Jack Kirby and I worked on the same project.
Mm-hmm.
I never spoke to Jack. I wrote a script. I turned it into the editor, Andy Helfer, and the next thing I know, Jack Kirby was drawing it. I didn't know who the artist was going to be when I wrote the script.
Right.
That hadn't been settled for sure.
Uh-huh.
I never really worked with Jack. Needless to say, I was thrilled. I mean, and especially since I made it in Just Under the Wire. That was his last, regular monthly comic that he ever drew.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I was thrilled to share a credit box with him. That's usually what I say. It's like it was great. I got to share a credit box with Gil Kane and Jack Kirby and Carmen Infantino and Kurt Swan. Very rarely did I get to collaborate in the actual sense of collaboration.
And when you were working with Kirby, because I noticed reading it, like there's a lot of high points. It's almost like you had like a creative, like it was almost like I felt like it was like a Kirby checklist. You had medieval times. You had time travel. You had dinosaurs. You had the future. Like it was just a checklist of Kirby goodness. And I was like, it really was a wonderful showcase of all his potential. So did you know, or
no? Again, I had no idea. My model, what I was looking to do was kind of the classic structure, or the structure of the classic Justice League of America comic. Breaking them up into teams and sending one each off to handle a part of the problem. As far as the things that I happened to pick to place them in, it was just history, time travel. Those are
right.
Those are tropes of the of those Justice League stories as well. Before Jack Kirby was drawing the Fantastic Four, but.
Did you ever get to socialize with him or Stan at all, Paul, in any social circles?
Not really socially. Sometimes at conventions. I think I met Jack once at a San Diego convention. It was years ago. It was a birthday party for him, surprise party for Jack at the San Diego convention. I think it was still at the El Conquistador Hotel or wherever it was. That was the only time I really got to spend even a few minutes with Jack. Stan, I would see going up to Marvel. I didn't spend a lot of time at Marvel because I was a DC guy. But I knew Stan. I'd see him at conventions. I'd see him up at the Marvel when I was visiting friends, and he usually called me Alan. And
Oh,
my brother had worked at Marvel, so at least he had made the association with the Kupperberg name.
right.
And I once at it was at a Chicago convention. There's a group picture taken of everybody there. Was Jeanette Kahn and Stan and Don McGregor and Paul Levitz and a whole bunch of us together. And afterwards, it was over. I was saying I said goodbye to Stan, and he said bye, Alan. Good to see you. And I said it's actually Paul. Alan's my brother. And he said, "Yeah, I understand. I'm always getting mistaken for my brother, but I'm the better looking one too." So. He was. I don't think Stan was ever awkward. He just he had an answer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, Paul, one of your characters that you're most famous for is Vigilante. So, two questions. Number one, I'm assuming you saw the John Cena Peacemaker show.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I thought it was really great when they made the joke that he's not driving around in a big purple van with a V on it.
Yeah. Well, there was none of that in my run of Vigilante. I can't speak for the first 19 issues, but but when I took over, I did away with as much of many of the superhero tropes as I could from that book. There was. It was, my chance to do a book finally grounded kind of in reality, much more than Superman and Supergirl. I mean, at one point in the 80s, before the crisis, I was writing Supergirl, Superboy. I was writing about a third of the output of Superman and Superman Action and DC Comics Presents. I was writing the Superman syndicated strip.
Okay.
I'd written a bunch of Superman, and you quickly learn that that's not an easy gig. How do you come up with 4 different things for God to fight every month?
Sure. And now with Vigilante, also, it's really interesting because you killed him off. He committed suicide. Spoiler alert. 30 years later.
Yeah, right.
Why did you make that choice?
Well, at some point, I decided if I was going to be approaching this character realistically, then I had to approach it from the point of view that he was insane. Right. From the very get-go, from the moment he put on that mask and picked up that gun, he was crazy because sane people don't do that. Right. So once I decided that, it was easy to just set him off on this path where where there would be no turning back for him. Where in comic book terms, his only redemption was death, and the only fitting really redemption was going to be at his own hand. After I think in number 37, I think it was, where he killed a police officer. That was it. He was doomed. It was something we kept in our back pocket. We didn't know when the book was going to end. It was inevitable, certainly in those days, that it was going to end, but we didn't know when. But once we were around number 43 or 44, and it was decided we'll just run it out through 50, it was just easy enough to pace it out and take it to that conclusion.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and he's still dead. I like to point out, by the way, that he is still dead. He is one comic book death, that has never been reversed. I'm very proud of that.
Cool. That is a cool book.
That is very rare these days.
Yeah, him and Archie, they're both still dead.
I have a question for you about Archie, actually. Okay, so you don't just write comics, you write short stories and fiction novels and historical nonfiction. And I was reading your blog, and you showed a script from 2011 with a pitch you had for the Riverdale Chronicles, which would have been from what I saw, 6 issues,
Hmm.
taking Archie characters from 1752 through the 1940s. And is that something, does your love of history feature into a lot of the different things that you write? Or was that
Oh
kind of a
yeah.
standalone, or is it something you try to incorporate as much as you can?
I play with it a lot. I've done, when I was doing, back in the olden days when I was still doing short stories for anthologies like Weird War Tales and things like that. Yeah, I'd often, pick some historic thing to play the story off of, and I think I did that in a few other, just mainstream stories as well. I do it more in my prose. I wrote a couple of. Stories about the Avenger, the that 1940s pulp character, and those played heavily on historical. One of them was set during Pearl Harbor, on Oahu. So I like to play with that stuff. It kind of gives an air of reality to fiction.
I always like to find out from our guests, like, where would you have landed had it not been for writing in comics and all the other stuff you write? Like, where do you think you would have landed if you weren't a an author?
You know, I don't know. I probably would have ended up an alcoholic teacher. Um,
Ah,
I don't think I ever.
summer's off.
Well, yeah, there is that. Um, but more time to drink.
Yeah.
Uh, it. I don't think it ever entered my head that it wouldn't happen. I was
Oh,
that focused on it. I was that, I guess that desperate in my need to make it because, God forbid, I should have to, live out in the real world and do something, important. But I just really never felt like there was anything else that I really could do or had the heart to do. I wanted to be a writer. Comic books if I could, but whatever, you know. Um,
what set you on that road, that passion? What gave you that drive to get to there?
no friggin' clue. It was just
No.
there.
Wonderful.
Um,
This is great.
yeah, it was just it was just there were a lot of things along the way that sparked it and and strengthened it and gave me the resolve, but it was always there. It was just I don't remember a time in my life when comic books weren't in there. My brother was a couple of years older than me, and I had an uncle who lived next door who was 10 years older. He was the guy who took us to our first movie. Three Stooges in Orbit uh, at the Congress Theater in Brooklyn. But like that stuff was just there. It was there. It was on television. There was a Superman. There was a TV show, a kid show that was on just before I went to bed every night when I was 4, 5, 6 years old. Claude Kirshner's Circus, and he ran. He would occasionally run the 1940s Fleischer Superman cartoons.
Oh,
So,
nice.
there I am at 4 years old, seeing these, albeit in black and white, but seeing these Superman cartoons and then going to sleep and dreaming about, black and white Superman. Until I just one day looked over at the newsstand in the candy store around the corner, and there he was, in full color. So that's it was just always there. There were the thing that finalized it that finally just made me realize like there was almost I don't believe in fate and destiny, but in the Flash of Two Worlds in the Flash 123, which was the introduction of the multiverse in the DCU in 1961, um, when Flash picks up the newspaper in Keystone City and looks at the headline to see where he is. The date on the newspaper is June 14th, 1961, and my birthday is June 14th.
Oh,
So when I was 10 years old and read this story reprinted in the Flash Annual, it was like, yeah, you know, it was, because by then we already, the
that's
multiverse was
wicked.
already starting to be a thing. And
Mhm.
like it was born on my birthday. How could I not be a part of this?
Nice. And you were a part of it because you
I
worked on a
was.
novelization on the Crisis of Infinite Earths, didn't you, with Marv Wolfman?
I edited his novelization of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I lost half of my writing assignments in it. So it was a
Oh,
beautiful thing. Supergirl and Superboy and Superman. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So a decade ago, about thereabouts, you did an AMA on Reddit, and someone had asked you what your proudest accomplishment was at that point in time, and you said, I've written a lot of stories that I'm very proud of, but I do think I'm doing some of my best work with Life with Archie series with the grown-up Archie characters.
Yeah.
Is that still the case today? Because you've done a lot since then.
Yeah. I think as far as my comic work stuff goes, I think that's some of the best stuff I ever did. It was a chance to exercise, uh, you know, to do comic books, but to do human comic books. I I I I always say that no matter how grounded and realistic you try to make superhero comics, they never can be because they're just inherently fantastic. There's in the course of human history, no one has ever put on a costume and gone out to fight crime ever. Nobody's done it. You know why? It's crazy. So writing these guys, no matter how much you try to ground it and make it real, it's not, and it never can be. But these Archie characters can be. I was amazed when I started writing them. My first Archie stuff was just traditional Archie short humor story, the teen stuff. I had written about a half a dozen of those. And I was amazed the first time I sat down to do a story. It was just, I realized how well I knew these characters. I've been reading them all my life. I read Archie's, when I was a kid. I remember I once traded 10, no, 30 superhero comics for 300 Archie comics when I was like,
Wow.
12 years old. And I read all of them. I love that stuff. But though they're incredibly well defined and well drawn characters, and when you start putting, the real stuff on them, they can handle it as long as you understand who they are. And I think I did. The first story I wrote about Archie was him, just a simple, Archie tries to get the dog from the Mrs. Lodge's dog from the groomer to the dog show without incident. And it's only a problem because Archie is so desperate to please, he so wants to help that he trips over his own feet and makes his own, creates his own accidents. That's who Archie is. Um, and once you know that, he's easy to write. Once you know that Jughead is the smartest guy in town, he's really easy to start playing with. He was probably my favorite character to write. Um, so yeah, no, I really, that was some of the best time I've had writing comic books, was doing those stories. Yeah.
That's really cool. So when you're writing, how do you choose the because in reading Superpowers, I noticed the panel layout was really interesting, where some was in bubbles, some was in.
Totally Jack.
Oh, really?
I was totally Jack. Yeah. I
Oh,
don't,
okay.
I wrote a full script. I don't, my full scripts have long been pretty minimal. I will tell the artist what I need to have to tell the story, but I don't tell them how to draw it because that's not my job.
Nice.
Um, I figure they'll know better. And again, I didn't know Jack was going to draw this thing, but I was pretty sure it wasn't going to, it was going to be somebody who knew what they were doing. I did a second Superpowers miniseries the following year that was drawn by Carmine Infantino. Another artist you don't have to worry about, telling him, being too detailed about telling him what to draw. So,
No, it amazes me sometimes the way the panels lay out and stuff, that the ease of reading. It was for me, it was a very easy read and such. So
Well,
But
Jack knew what he was doing. I mean, let's face it, he was, he just had this intuitive understanding of storytelling. I mean, you look at his stuff going back all the way to 1940 and 41. He was already showing that. The his stories moved. You could follow them. And in his case, sometimes they literally leapt from one panel into the next. So it was pretty easy to follow. Yeah, there was just a few people better than him at that kind of thing.
mm,
And I noticed
Well,
something.
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carrie.
I'm sorry. Oh, I noticed something when with the writing of it, and it was something else that I heard you mention kind of on an interview that I was watching earlier this year that you had. But bringing up having the characters say something about themselves that maybe somebody who is new to the comic wouldn't have known about them. Like, oh, my secret identity, I'm a curator at a museum and stuff. So oh, and my, weakness is fire. Things like that that I noticed that just because I'd heard you say something about it earlier when I was
Yeah,
doing some research for stuff. I think it's great that you went into that because it could be, as you said at one point, like somebody's first time reading about that character in the series.
that was exactly it. It was, I think it was my first Superman story for Julie Schwartz. After he read it, he said, "You didn't tell the reader that Clark Kent is Superman." And I said, "Gee, I thought everybody knew that." And he goes, "You don't know. This could be somebody's first exposure to Superman, the first time they've ever read a comic book story. They might not know, so you tell them somehow. I mean, the trick is to make it kind of sound natural, um, uh, but but it's something as simple as when a character enters the scene, address them by name. Tell me who it is. Frankly, these days, a lot of the artists, like, man, I can't tell these characters apart. They all look alike. So when the writer doesn't use their name, I don't know what's going on. Um, but there are certain simple little things like that you can't. I was watching some British murder mystery yesterday, last night, and we get to the end of it, and in the last 5 minutes, the lost sibling is revealed, and it's like, no, that's a cheat. There was no indication up till now that there was anybody, there was any sibling. So this is just bad writing. I thought the British were better than that, but hey, go figure. But yeah, you can't cheat the reader, and you're cheating the reader by not identifying things. If suddenly Martian Manhunter collapses because he walks into the country inn and there's a fireplace, you've got to know in advance that fire is his weakness. Otherwise, what the
there's
hell's going
no,
on?
yeah.
Well, speaking of good writing, I know you were a collaborator in the original DC Challenge,
Oh yes,
which was, and during my research, I found out it was conceived during a rooftop party at the 1983 San Diego Comic Con.
right.
And I know that the narrative was always that each chapter is written by a different person and illustrated by a different artist. And the goal was that it would always end in a cliffhanger that the next writer would have to figure out how the character
Right.
would get out of it. So, you know, what was that like? Just kind of being part of this, something that really hadn't been done before, and also, and you guys have some great parties. I mean, I'm hearing lunches, dinners. I mean,
Yeah. It was it was an unholy mess. There were some rules set up at the beginning. I think I wrote number seven, the seventh of 12.
yeah,
Joe Staten and I did that.
Bogart, that grape, and me the gas pump.
Right.
With
Thank
Stan.
you. Yes. um. Uh. Yeah, that was just like, by the time it got to me, it had gone so totally off the rails. People just were going off in their own direction and not following up whatever the rules that were originally set up were. So it was kind of just like, as I recall, I was almost vamping through my whole issue because I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know where it was supposed to go. I just knew I was supposed to mess with the next guy, whoever that was going to be. Yeah, so I don't think it was not a successful experiment. It was a lot of fun. I mean, the whole thing was, just a boatload of fun, but I think it kind of fell apart there. Yeah.
Gotcha. Paul, because I love the character of the Joker, you recently were at a panel at Terrificon this summer, and you did a deep dive into the Killing Joke. And I know you're not a huge fan of that. So, what inspired that?
My not being a huge fan? Reading
No, just that you did a new deep dive into it.
Oh, I wrote a piece. I wrote an essay for a book, and I'm blanking on the name of it. The Man Who Laughs. It's an anthology of essays about the Joker across time, and you know, I I loved the Joker's Five Fingers of Doom, that Neil Adams story, the one that brought the Joker back after 4 or 5 years. Julie Schwartz didn't like the Joker and didn't use him, and then when Neil came on and Denny and Neil did that story, it refocused the Joker and made him into a villainous character. I saw that story very early on. My brother lettered it. It was like one of the few DC comics he lettered. So he had it. I saw pages when he brought it home,
Nice.
and so I love the story. But then years later, we get to the Killing Joke, which is like, well, I guess that's a story, but I don't know who that guy wearing the Batman costume is. That was, um, and for years, I just like Alan Moore sucks because he did that story.
Mhm.
Alan Moore sucks for many reasons, but not specifically for that. But when I went into when I was researching the thing, it was like I'm going to end this by tearing Alan Moore a new asshole, like he cares. But it was just me getting it out of my system because I didn't like that story. And doing the research, I find that Alan goes, "Yeah, I'm sorry I wrote that because everybody misunderstood. It was just supposed to be a one-off
Right.
story. It wasn't meant to, to change the dynamic of the Joker. It was an Elseworlds. Why is everybody taking it seriously?"
Yeah.
So,
It was an
yeah,
edit that was made canon. And
yeah,
I mean, yeah, you had Barbara as the Oracle, which became a great character in that set, but Alan Moore really, really didn't like that. And it's also funny because other people who I believe share a similar opinion as you, Paul, like Grant Morrison, who is not a fan of Alan, I think vice versa. And we brought this up in the show. We were talking about the Killing Joke briefly. He was talking about this whole theory about the end, like there's this bigger significance.
yeah.
Like I believe, guys, if I'm recalling correctly, I believe the argument was that Batman kills the Joker at the end, right?
That was
Yeah.
an interpretation.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's again, like stories can be interpreted that way. But I think the only person would know would be Alan Moore. No offense, I don't think we're getting him on the show anytime soon. So.
No, but again, in interviews he did after the fact, he said no, he wasn't killing him. They were just sharing a laugh.
Right.
The Batman doesn't kill.
Right. So.
Well, didn't kill.
Yeah. No.
I don't know what the hell he does now. I haven't read the comics in 15 years.
He survives falling through space.
Oh yeah, you missed.
Oh, well, he's Batman.
So, exactly. He prepared for it.
And he survives time and space.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
And I said he survives both time and space, sir. He's the Batman, time and space.
He's Michael Keaton.
There was a time when you worked for, was it the World Weekly News?
The Weekly World News, yes.
The Weekly World News. Now,
the world's only reliable newspaper.
That was like Sasquatch stories and UFOs, correct?
Yeah, we were Batboy, and it was the creator of Batboy, the creator of the Elvis sightings. Bigfoot was a regular. We had Pilad, the space alien who advised the Clinton presidential campaign. We
that's
were,
awesome.
we were where you went to find the truth.
So now, were there like just a group of writers just writing nonsense, or were people actually turning in these stories?
It was, I wouldn't call it nonsense. I would call it humor and satire. Uh,
Right.
but yeah, we had a bunch of regulars who wrote for it. I did a lot of writing for it myself in the last 2 or 3 years of the paper's run. Um, my favorite story that I wrote was about a fight that broke out at a dyslexics convention because everybody thought they had won the raffle. So yeah, it was not all Batboy and aliens. It was wacky stuff like that. But
Okay.
yeah, it was a great job. It was a lot of fun. I was working. I hired a bunch of people away from DC Comics. Bob Greenberger was working with me. Our Photoshop artist was Maddie Blaustein, who had worked at DC, and our art director had been in DC's licensing department. So yeah, it was a bunch of old pals working together, and frankly, after having to edit 6 or 8 monthly comic book titles, turning out a 48 page tabloid weekly was kind of easy. So
Right.
So, no belief in any of these Bigfoots or anything for
no,
yourself?
no, no, no. In fact, I would get phone calls from people who took us seriously. I got a call from a guy who said he was some, reverend something or other, and after years of investigation and research and travel, he had discovered the true location of the Garden of Eden,
Oh,
and had
sweet.
written the book and was offering us the book. And at first, I thought he was kidding with me, but really, he wasn't. He was very serious and wanted us to publish excerpts from his book. And I said, look, and we maintained the fiction. When people called up, yeah, it was like, maintain the fiction. The founding editor said, if somebody calls me up and says their toaster is talking to them, I don't tell them they're crazy. I tell them to put the toaster on the phone.
Very good.
So yeah, so that was, yeah. But this guy, finally, I took pity. I said, look, man, everything we print is made up. It's all fiction. It says so in 4-point type on page 3. It's right there. And he goes, "Oh, I know, but this is real." So I gave him the phone number of the New York Times and told them that this was their speed.
Now, Paul, what was the last thing you actually did for DC Comics?
I wrote an introduction to a House of Mystery omnibus a year or so ago. That was the last few years. I would get occasional, calls to write intros to something I'd been. I had written for the House of Mystery back then. This is covered the dollar comic years when I was first starting. So I've done things like that, but as far as comic books go, I don't think there's anybody still up there who even knows who I am.
Right. Well, it's all different staff, I would assume now.
Yeah, yeah. It's there's a whole bunch of people of my generation, I'm sure, who are just like I really stopped writing regularly by the early '90s, so their knowledge of comics seems to start around 2000, the '90s or 2000. So I don't know that I exist anymore.
Right.
So
Now,
with,
did
with
that scare you when this calls stopped coming, or were you quick to get other work?
Yeah, I got a staff gig. It's when I went on. That's when I went on staff at DC. I was an editor there for 16 years. In the DCU and licensing and in licensed publishing. So yeah, I spent. I did that, and I'm still doing some writing. But look, every career has has limitations, especially in this type of stuff. And the more that comic books became show business, the more my age could be held against me. It's a lot of guys were like that. It's like I spoke to a lot of people, my contemporaries, who were like, No, I've got gray hair. I don't know that they're interested in me anymore. Just because I've got 40 years experience and know what I'm doing. But
So
hey, Sarah,
was the
I'm on
devil
Social
in
Security
Leo?
now. Fuck them all.
Hell yeah.
Was the devil in Leo Persky based off of your time at the Weekly World News?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I started writing. He was a character that I was asked to do a short story for an anthology. So I decided, why not have some fun with it and base it on the Weekly World News. So yeah, I came up with Leo, and I wound up writing about half a dozen short stories and then a novella, which I published as the Devil and Leo Persky. But yeah, it's all set. It's all set at the World Weekly News because I cleverly disguised the true place. Um, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, they're goofy and funny, and they're all set in a world where Batboy really does exist.
Nice.
Yay.
We do have a user viewer question. Do you like the Joker having a definitive origin, and what is your favorite Joker origin, if any?
No, I don't think the Joker should have an origin. I think the Joker should have that kind of vague. He was some anonymous guy who, fell into a vat of acid and yada yada yada. I don't need to know who he is. Who he was is irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's what he became. And to kind of not lock him into any one thing, it's kind of it's even more frightening, I think, because he could be anybody.
I like that.
And I do like how you were saying that it takes somebody who's crazy to be a superhero. I got in your shorts last night, and I only
I
made it
felt like that was
through.
something.
Very.
He has a book of short stories called In My Shorts, and
Yes.
I was reading Reflected Glory last night, and it's a story about a PR man for a superhero, and I really loved how you had his kind of origin and how it is kind of like it's crazy to go out and be a superhero and everything that you said some at some point also that telling a short and succinct story is a great aspect to great storytelling, and you did that very well in
Thank you.
taking the whole beginning to end with it. And forget, I've just had some dental work, so I'm having problems speaking on some things, but
I just had my teeth cleaned and I can't do a thing with them.
I was in a production of that
is that
Paul, so I just want to say thank you because it was one of the weirdest musicals that I've ever done, but it was hilarious. So thank
With
you.
Batboy the musical?
In a production of Batboy the musical.
Yes, that had nothing to do with us. So the idiots who owned the paper licensed the Batboy to these people in perpetuity for $1. So
Oh,
Wow.
It's not a great business move.
Yeah, they took the Stephen King method. Like, we'll try that, and then big mistake.
yeah, I don't think I've ever seen it. I've heard some recordings, but I don't think I've ever seen the musical.
It's something. I'll tell you. I wasn't that boy. I was the sheriff, but it is something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No.
so since you didn't get the chance to meet with a lot of the artists that you worked with, who are a few that like really had an impression on you while you were working with them?
Well, everybody, in the 1960s, everybody talks about Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. But for me, it was Julie Schwartz and Carmine Infantino. Carmine drew virtually every great comic book story of the 1960s at DC. And I was much more into those guys than I was the Marvel stuff. Just a personal preference. I started reading comics before Marvel existed. By the time I became aware of them, I was already so deeply into Superman and Flash and Batman and all that. But getting to work with Carmine, for a couple of years, over several years actually on both Supergirl and other stories, along the way, was just just amazing to me that the guy who drew the Flash of Two Worlds was drawing my stupid ass story. It was just
That's
like
pretty cool.
unbelievable. Gil Kane was another case. Gil, if Carmine was DC's Kirby, then Gil was DC's Steve Ditko, and man, uh, he did I wrote a Green Lantern a core annual, and Gil drew it, and you know it's hard to describe. There's kind of that little. No matter how jaded you become as a after 40, 50 years in the business, there's still that little fanboy that starts squealing when certain people come along. Um, I was talking with somebody earlier today, and she was talking about one of her influences being Bernie Wrightson, and and I never worked with Bernie, but I was friendly with him, and we would hang out at conventions, and I had some incredible bar cons hosted by Bernie over the years, and the fact that I interacted with this guy, the fact that I could hang out and have a drink with him, the fact that Julie Schwartz and I were friends, it's just I'm still that 14-year-old, that 13-year-old taking the tour of DC in the 60s, and can't believe my eyes. But I got to be on the other side of that door. So
That's
it was
awesome.
it was great. I don't think I ever took it for granted.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Have you collected over the years still, or do you know?
Oh, I'm on the far side of having collected. I am into the having spent the last dozen years divesting of
Ah,
possessions. Yeah,
understand.
I've been getting rid of lots of stuff because you get old and start moving a lot, and you go, I don't want to schlep this stuff around for the rest of my life. It's heavy.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I just did a large downsizing myself of 40 long boxes.
Wow, yeah,
Yeah, it takes
feels
a hit
good,
on the
doesn't it?
heart. Oh, it does, but it's also like, oh, that's like a lot of
I know,
years.
I know. Well, when I first started putting stuff up on eBay, I put this. The first thing I put up was an old fanzine from like 1970, and I put it up for a few bucks, and it wound up and if I paid for it at the time when I got it, because I was doing fanzines myself, so we used to trade all the time. If I paid for it, it was no more than a buck, and it wound up going for $165, I think it was. And I thought, this is actually pretty easy.
Oh
So
yeah. Okay, yeah, that changes things.
yes, yes,
I,
it's
I
it's
see
all
some of
about
your,
perspective.
I see some of your posts, Paul. Does that a lot of that stuff sell?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
The toys,
Oh,
the comics,
actually,
everything.
yeah. I
I
was following your toys on eBay for a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I also when my brother died, I inherited all of his stuff. I got literally 2,500 pounds of stuff delivered from
Oh my.
after he died. So you know,
Lots
there,
of
there
liquidity.
was a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. Well, we're coming on just about an hour, Paul. We don't want to
Wow,
spend too much on your
and
time.
nope,
And
that's fine. That's great.
we certainly appreciate it. Anybody else have any last questions for Paul so we can get him back to his life?
We
I
can go ahead,
I did
Carrie.
want to the whole reason I brought up the short story thing before when I was stammering my way through it was because you had done the issue 100 of Showcase,
Right,
and you'd mentioned that you were able to bring in every character who'd ever been in there and wrap it up in 38 pages. And that being able to get everything that short, and how there used to be a lot of anthology comics out so that writers could learn how to write a short succinct story and
right.
do so. Do you think that these days we should get the publishers to bring out more anthology style comics to help people get that in their minds, that there can be a short story that then stops? There's an actual ending to things.
Yeah, I don't think the publishers are interested in that. And I think people aren't getting experience. New people aren't getting experience in the business the way we did in the 60s and 70s. There was House of Mystery, House of Secrets, Weird War Tales, Unexpected, Ghosts. So there were all these books, and editors could afford to take a chance and buy a lot of bad anthology stories because they could either write them off and not print them at the end of the year, or they could just bury them between a bunch of good stories in an issue of House of Mystery. And even Superman Family. You had this book with 6 different 10-page features in it. Again, you can do Crypto, you can do Supergirl, you can do Superboy, Mr. and Mrs. Clark Kent. There was a place to experiment. Now, I don't think the audience is certainly Marvel and DC's audience. I don't think is particularly interested in short stories. I think they're in it for the long epics, and there's plenty of places for people to create and publish their shorter pieces and kind of learn their tricks that way. You can do it. You don't need a publisher. You can just put your work out there. But I think they are missing a bet. I think there's no longer kind of a reliable farm team like there used to be in those days where they could afford to burn some stuff just in the hopes. I was talking to Jerry Conway recently, and he said, when he was first starting out, he was Dick Giordano was kind of helping him, before he sold anything. And he said years later, Dick said, I never thought you'd ever be able to do it. You just didn't seem to have, but you kept at it. There was a guy who was willing to work with him and give him a chance, and eventually he broke through. Jerry was 15 when he first started trying, so he's forgiven that it took him a little time. But but I was 19. Jim Shooter was 13, Paul Levitz was 16, Len Wein was 19. I don't think that same atmosphere exists these days.
No.
Sorry to bum you out.
Oh no.
Taking it in, actually. Facebook user says lots of examples in comic books and comic book movies where it's easy to say that superhero wouldn't do that. Example: Superman snapping Zod's neck, Batman with guns. Any stories that you are like, yes, that's exactly how the character would be?
In movies or?
Sounded like both.
Yeah.
Okay.
People are willing to justify whatever they like. They think it's whatever they happen to think is cool. Look, I come from very old school Mort Weisinger Superman. That's my Superman. That goody two shoes who who was always there to save a cat from a tree or whatever. That goofy guy was my superhero. The inconsistencies didn't bother me because frankly there was nothing realistic about it to begin with. You didn't have to worry about that stuff. You just accepted it for what it was. But that's not the mindset. The day fans started questioning these givens, was I think the beginning of the downfall of kind of the loss of innocence. There was a story that Martin Pasco wrote, which he hated, and I'm sorry for bringing it up, Marty. Please forgive me. But Julie Schwartz wanted him to do a story that explained why nobody recognized Clark Kent through the flimsy disguise of a pair of glasses and a spit curl. And the answer which Julie came up with and had Marty implement, and I've been on the end of Julie's suggestions and implementing his ideas in my stories, but was that the glasses in Clark's glasses were made from Kryptonian glass that emitted and amplified super hypnosis that made the whole world see Clark as this, kind of little weenie as opposed to Superman. And it was ridiculous. It's just, it's silly describing it out loud. But fans wanted to know. They wanted an answer. How could this work? It had been 45, 50 years of nobody asking that question, and everything was fine. But now we have to have an answer to that. So,
It just was like same thing with Joker having an origin. Why
Yeah.
can't Joker just be?
yeah, and not everything needs to be explained. There's something fun about mystery behind a character.
And also with multiverse, there's literally a version for everybody. So anybody really can complain because
Sure.
that's the beauty. And that's how I always say, it's like, listen, if it's not yours, then just stay with Superman, Batman, DC, and let other person enjoy that. Like, that's the beauty of comics. There's literally something for everybody. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But,
And Paul, when you started, you were essentially writing for kids up to age maybe 12, 14, 16 tops. And now, definitely ages have stretched a lot further. And they've done
now
stuff
like a 25 to 40.
Kids comics is its own separate genre now.
Yeah.
So we just had on Art Baltazar, who does a lot of the kid comics. So it's like a different thing now.
Oh, totally. It's become comics were kids stuff, and now there are kids stuff in the comic genre, or in the comics medium. It's I don't remember. I wasn't consciously writing to an age group. Even back then, I was just writing the stories that the types of stories that were being done. I guess the target really was 13 to 17 by then. Although when I started reading them, the assumption was kids read comics from 8 to 13 or so. It was kind of a 5-year window, which is why in 1960, when they started reprinting, the 80-page giants, and they had classic stories from the past, most of those stories weren't more than 3 or 4 years old, because most of the audience buying those books wouldn't remember them, hadn't read them originally, and B, I don't think they had the means to reproduce those stories back then. Back when they were before they had photostats or silver plates or silver prints of the stories to reprint. So, but yeah, it was a very small window, and we were comics back then. You were never meant to still be reading comics by the time you were in high school.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for coming on. We really appreciate your time. The stories were fantastic, and thank you so much for all your input. And also, thank you for still working in comics.
Oh, well, it was either that or get a real job, man. So
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul,
Thank you
it's
guys
been
so
really
much.
great.
Go and get some of his fiction and some of his nonfiction as well. As novels and prose are great. Going through.
Thank you
them,
very
so
much.
Thank
Yes,
you so much.
You can check out my website at paulkupperberg.net, and there's you can check out the books and order them from there, or Amazon.com. Not that I want to come on here and do a crass commercial plug, but there it is.
Absolutely. And
Actually,
if
we
you
asked
catch that, guys, there are links above and down below for all of Paul's stuff.
Oh, good,
And-
because I don't want to do anything cheap and chintzy like
Where actually do you like people to interact with you the most?
Facebook and well, I'm still on X, but I'm also on Blue Sky. So that's usually the easiest way to reach me.
Okay.
Well, thank you again for your time, Paul. We appreciate your stories, and I'm sure we'll see you hopefully next year on the con circuit.
Absolutely. Well, thanks. It was a lot of fun talking to you guys.
Thanks, Paul.
Have
Have
a
a great night.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Am I supposed to go?
Oh,
If
yeah.
you want to,
Oh, if you want, you can stay and hang out for the
you
next
can
hour.
hang out.
or
We're
two.
going to do like comic book news, and then we're
all
going to
you
talk
have
about Super Powers. But
That's
No,
all you
you're
have to do.
I'm going to go have ice cream.
Yeah,
Okay,
all you have to
enjoy.
do is hit leave studio.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take it easy.
Thanks, Paul. Have a great night.
Have a good night.
Bye, Paul.
So, all right,
You guys
guys,
are in two there.
we are now on to what? The news or the book?
Well, we talked about it. Let's bang out the news, and then we'll just spend our thoughts of the book, and then call it dead. I'm fading.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm catching half of what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm fading like really hard. I'm fine.
Okay.
All right, so let's do the news.
All right. I swirled up a little bit. Drew, some of your picks aren't the exact ones that you put, but there are ones I was able to grab. So.
Okay, so this is me. So apparently now, like so many other things, there are now dinosaur Avengers. Fantastic Four issue 12 by Ryan North and Ivan Coelho will have the Fantastic Four end up in a different universe where basically, the world's mightiest heroes are now the world's mightiest dinosaurs. So,
That was fun.
I mean,
Thanks for the sound effects.
I mean, I tried really hard to analyze which is who is what, and I think the thing that either got me the most was a Tyrannosaurus, or like looks like to be a Tyrannosaurus or a Spinosaurus, Captain America, and then in the back there, that's a Brontosaurus Iron Man. So I'm just dealing with that, and the fact that you've got a Captain Marvel and a Doctor Strange and a Thor dinosaur. I'm like, wow, that is fantastic.
Yeah.
So I think that looks pretty cool. That's going to be out October 4th.
My nephews would die for that. They're like 5. They're like, dinosaurs! And they'd probably know all the names for them, too, the correct ones.
And now superhero dinosaurs. That makes it even better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's out October 4th. So check that out. And cover by Alex Ross, because, my God, that man never needs to worry about money.
Just keep showing it. Ding, ding, ding.
All right, I'm good.
That's Alex Ross?
Okay.
No. Oh.
That's not
yeah.
Alex Ross.
Oh, this
Oh,
one.
that's not.
That is Jerry Conway.
Mhm.
Yes.
So apparently, Jerry Conway, who created The Punisher, he followed Stan Lee's run on Amazing Spider-Man, where he wrote the story that killed off Gwen Stacy.
Yeah.
He's created Firestorm, Power Girl, started posting about his social media health struggles since last fall. He explained that his fans might have noticed he had been absent from social media for most of the year. He has pancreatic cancer and complications with his treatment for the disease, and at least he appears to be cancer-free now.
Oh,
So
that's good.
thank goodness for that. I'm really glad that he's still with us. Paul Kupperberg just mentioned they were just having a conversation recently. So fortunately, he's still with us and will be for a long time, hopefully.
Hopefully. I mean, I swear we've been hit with so much death recently. I mean, even today, I'm sure you guys saw Steve Harwell from Smash Mouth passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Due to chronic liver fatigue from alcohol.
Poisoning.
Alcohol poisoning. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's just so sad. I mean, he was only 56 years old. That's still fairly young in my mind.
That's very young.
56? That's very young.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, even we also lost Jimmy Buffett recently.
Yeah.
76. And all I know is I have a friend who is a big fan of margaritas, and I was like, you got to make one. You got to make one today for Jimmy. And she actually gave me a play-by-play of buying the ingredients and then finished with the margarita. And I just said, man, that looks good enough to take with you if dinosaurs attack. And she
There you go.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's crazy right now. I mean, I swear we lost, 6 celebrities in 2 weeks? Almost 6?
Something like that.
Yeah. Like, 2023
Are any of them young?
I feel like 2023 is like, oh, it's almost the end of the year. Okay, gotta pump them up now. Okay, cool. And I'm just like, no, take a break. Like, go on vacation.
All right, what else we got, Carrie?
All right, I'm collecting now pictures of this gentleman because he is always in the news. So
Yeah, he is.
Mr. Gunn.
So James Gunn debunks Facebook deactivation. claims following controversial Batman comments. The short of it is somebody pulled up some comments that he made in 2011, how essentially he didn't like the Batman movie. He said they were poorly written, one of the most boring films ever. He also piled onto Jack Nicholson's portrayal of the Joker, saying, "Fuck you, everyone involved in that travesty. I have a problem with both of Nolan's films. I don't think either one is a classic, and I don't even really think Batman Begins is good." So
Okay.
this is the time when he was being very controversial on the web. I think some of his comments even got him fired from Marvel around the same time period. So just them bringing this stuff back up. His Facebook did disappear, but apparently someone tried to hack. They give him a 24-hour timeout, and it's totally back up again. And nonsense. So just more James Gunn debunking nonsense. So I know Jeremy loves that.
I do.
I just don't understand, like, why. Like, it was said years ago. Like, he's clearly like, he admitted this. Like, I am a different person now. Like, I apologize for anything that may have been. And it's like, I feel like, the court has statute of limitations for certain things. Why can't we have that for social media and certain statements? Like, it's his opinion. If he didn't like the Batman, I don't agree with that, but it doesn't make me say, "Oh, fuck James Gunn, burn his films."
Right.
Exactly.
And I'd hope anybody would be a different person every 10 years. Like that's enough time to change a little bit, have some good behavior bestowed upon you and
Absolutely. So
learn from your ways.
I just feel like some of these people that they have all this time in their hand, and they're just like, we're just gonna fuck with that person. They might have like a chart. Like, all right, today we're gonna screw this person's life. And I'm just like,
James Gunn is gonna be that guy until
he steps in.
until the DCU universe gets taken out of his hands, at least.
I was gonna say till they fire him from the job.
Yep.
All right, next.
All right, going next. This is you, Drew.
Yes. So this is now available now. Marvel has revealed that in a new comic, Spider-Man Unlimited issue 1, the Spider-Man from the PlayStation video games, I believe that's the Insomniac games, will be crossing over to meet the 616 Spider-Man. So written by Christoph Gage with art by Simone Bion Fantino and Fer Cifuentes y Sujo. So this stuff, which is available online now, the 12-part story arc, these stories are a little shorter than your average Spider-Man. You're going to have Peter Parker of our world, or 616, the Peter Parker of that Spider-Man world, and their first official meeting, taking on the Beyond the Spider-Verse enemy, the Spot. So I find it interesting because they talk about this is the first time it crossed over, but we've seen that Spider-Man in the Spider-Mageddon crossovers. So I was like, okay, still cool. I was like, okay. I was like, that's a Spider-Man game. Because what I've seen of the Insomniac games, they're really beautiful and very great story and well acted and everything. So, hey, more power too.
Nice.
I haven't tried any Insomnia games myself.
Oh, they're pretty good.
This is not so much a game, but there is available from Marvel fans on ZRX Mobile. It's an exercise app that they actually have. And it's set up for people for all different kinds of training, and it's a jogging thing, but you like go on a quest or an adventure, and so you can tune in and like on this it's showing how you can have like the beginners or the marathon training and things like that. Each little thing that you do, you'll get like rewards like water bottles, but they'll be, you get it ready to go and you start playing. And like the Thor and Loki one that it shows over there is an 8-week plan with 24 individual voiced workouts. So each one of those is brand new every time you go. It'll be like, you should go charge for this now. Oh, here they come. I've got your back. Let's go. And they just encourage you the whole time that you're running, and it'll be like, you've picked up a free bottle of water. So then you can pause to take a drink or something as you're going. And it looks like it's going to be really fun and, kind of motivating. I mean, you don't get to see it as you're going, but that's going to be going on Google Play and Android. It's going to be $7.90 a month or $74.99 a year, and that's going to be out soon. So that was fun.
Good for your fitness nerds.
If they go more the style of Pokemon Go, I might be interested. Where like you go around fighting all the bad guys and collect superpowers.
I can't look at him not laugh. Like, he was using it. This is Rich.
Yeah, this is me. So that's obviously Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So Marvel fans react to Daniel Radcliffe's shredded physique. Make him Wolverine already, they say. So they've been for a long time now. I've heard teases of the possibility of Daniel Radcliffe being Wolverine because he's short and now he's shredded. His physical transformation for his new role in the TV series Miracle Workers is spurring this on. So what do you guys think? Can we see Daniel Radcliffe? I mean, he's really stretched as an actor. He's way better than Harry Potter.
But I agree with that, but I don't think he's Logan.
No, you can't see him.
I mean, I could see him right there as Logan, but his whole demeanor normally in almost everything I've seen him, he's like a gentle spoken person. I've saw him in some where he was like, I know the Steve Buscemi one is comedy. I've seen the first season of it. It's pretty good. He does well in it, but I just don't see him as
that picture's from, actually.
Badass superhero.
Carrie,
yeah, that must be the new season.
Carrie, you've been laughing. What do you think?
What?
What's your opinion?
I can't see him doing.
No way.
I really enjoy Daniel Radcliffe as an actor, but yeah, I can't see him doing. I can't see him with a cigar and calling people bub. It would just. I'd just be laughing through the whole thing.
Yeah,
seeing him. Like his physique is impressive, but
not enough.
No, yeah, just
he could be like Puck.
Yeah, he'd make a good Puck. I could see that.
That would be good.
They've been doing this with him, Efron.
Drew, close to your mic, buddy.
Yeah, they've been doing this with. They've been doing casting with him, Zac Efron, Tara Edgerton, and I just at this point I was like, listen, just make a fucking announcement,
for real.
Like, and if anybody complains, I'm like, we're still gonna get Q in Deadpool 3. So, like, fuck off. Like, moving on.
As our guest said, fuck them all.
Yeah.
I'm on social security, damn you.
What else we got, Care?
All right, so The Amazing Spider-Man number 33 is coming out, and there's going to be kind of little spoilers here, but in 32, Norman Osborn, leading up to this, Norman Osborn had the sin removed, all of his sin removed from him by a sin eater, and they synthesized his sin, and it was given to the Queen Goblin, who is Kraven's girlfriend, who decided to get rid of it from her and deliver it back to Norman Osborn. But look who jumped in the way. Oh no! Oops! Spidey got stabbed with all of Osborn's sin and is now hunting down Kraven in his black outfit from way, way, way back in the day, as in recall to the time when he wore the black spider suit and Kraven buried him alive, and it was really horrible. So, but there's also a chance that it might not just last for an issue. There are hints that he could end up becoming the Black Goblin for a while. So that was something that I found to be kind of interesting. Next.
I think it's interesting, but they're always changing him into something.
Yeah. So I kind of just wrapped it up.
That looks like a Time Lord on a wolf.
Yes.
Is this me?
Yes,
me.
This is.
I was like, wait a second. So, in something different, there is news that Amazing Spider-Man writer, Marvel writer, Dan Slott is going to be making history writing a Doctor Who comic. Once Upon a Time Lord. So this is set during the era of the 10th Doctor, where we have the story around when he had his companion, Martha Jones. So Martha is captured by alien pyromechs who feed on the psychic energy released by Story. So to save her life, she must basically play the part of Shahrazad and tell stories of the Doctor. So as we know, Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, a lot of great comic writers have contributed, but it's a very rare thing for a non-British writer to write the Doctor or even licensed properties. So this is really interesting. So Dan, this is his debut with Giant Comics. So you have the sequences of Martha, which some we just saw, illustrated by Christopher Jones. The story sequences are by Matt Dow Smith, who is one of the few to write and draw the Doctor. There's also going to be a backup flash-up story centered around the Ninth Doctor that's going to be drawn by a veteran artist, Mike Collins. And this is going to be online and in stores October 24th.
Never was I a Doctor Whovian. Anybody?
I
Off and on.
Yeah, you guys
I
are?
try to be. I can't keep up with it all, but
I tried the new stuff once, and that very first episode was a trip where all the mannequins were coming to life and stuff, and
Oh, that's great stuff.
weird mailboxes and stuff.
Yeah. Love it.
all right.
Yeah,
Now I got
That was some trip.
over to Rich.
Oh, wow.
All right. So, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle costumes and concept art selling at auction. So this is stuff from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, currently up for auction at Direct Liquidation, which is a Vancouver-based company that works with film and TV studios to sell unwanted props and wardrobe stuff. The company, which recently sold off wardrobe from recently canceled series like Snowpiercer and DC Legends of Tomorrow, has a wide-ranging auction that is taking place on September 16th with early bidding that can be taking place online right now. And while much of the auction appears to be an estate sale for firearms enthusiasts, there are some cool Hollywood pieces there as well. Now, there's 3 mostly complete turtle costumes, which include the bodysuit, mask, and some of the period attire they wore while traveling to the past. A 4th suit is also up for grabs, though it's missing its mask. There is also a pile of concept art from the film, including mutant designs and a turtle shell on its own. So
I wish I had stupid money.
yeah, so if you're a huge turtle fan, you can definitely find this information at comicbook.com, where the auction is and all the cool art. And Carrie just showed you some of the concept art that's out there selling too. So if you're TMNT, go get it.
I wonder what it's up to so far.
It hasn't started yet.
It
hasn't started yet.
It's going to be good enough for Justin Cooper to consider taking out a second mortgage.
All right, this moves us to our last. Drew, this is you. Just going to go through as we do here.
Ooh.
In the spirit of Halloween, Marvel Zombie will be coming back with a Black, White, and Blood series. It's a 4-issue miniseries. Essentially, I think this is another version similar to the Marvel Zombies Reborn, where it's set in the universe where Avengers, X-Men, Spider-Man, and many more Marvel heroes and villains are beset by ever-growing zombie hordes and transform into flesh and monsters. So, Marvel's Stormbreaker artists, which is an offshoot of their Young Guns program, are basically doing Marvel zombie covers. So you've got Spider-Man, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Daredevil, Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Venom, Wolverine. So yeah, artists you see there: Elena Casagrande, Nick Klein, Jan Basaludo, Chris Allen, Mark Pin, Coccolo, Lucas Vernick, Federico Vincenti, and CF Villa. So this issue, which is going to be in stores October 25th, we have Garth Ennis returning to Marvel Universe with Rachel Stott to talk about the tragic fate of Matt Murdock, who has committed unspeakable sins and now an old accomplice may be coming by to put him out of his misery. Spider-Man by writer-artist Segura and Javier Fernandez. Essentially, He is forced to fight fiendish versions of his loved ones. Is he going to give up, or is he going to do the other? Writer Ashley Allen makes her Marvel debut, teamed up with Justin Mason for Moon Knight tale. Discover how Khonshu, the god who gives Mark Spector his powers, intervenes during apocalyptic times to protect October 25th.
The concept art for it looks amazing.
Yeah. Look cool. I just think I'm more hesitant.
Yeah, those are some scary looking covers. Very beautiful artwork.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And Marvel's going on in Halloween. It's going to be a spooky one. I just, I've read so much Marvel Zombies, and Carrie's read even more. It's just,
I've read them all.
there's really no much to it. So I think, all right, now, I mean, those covers, I would gladly buy those over anything Arthur Sedan has done recently. But that's just.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so I think that's all the news, okay?
Yep, we got everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unless,
You guys talk about some of your favorite parts of the book, and then we'll just wrap it up.
Yeah, so this week we went over Super Powers, which was written by our guest this evening, Paul Kupperberg, and drawn by the great Jack Kirby. And it was 6 issues. For me, it was a pretty quick read. I thought the art it's very Jack Kirby. If you like Jack Kirby's style, then you're gonna like this book. And it's Darkseid, and it's a dark series. So there's deception, and there's time travel, and there's Desaad and Calabac, and all your great superpowers teams, which is pretty much the JLA.
Yeah, essentially, this would be the closest Kirby ever got to the JLA story.
Yeah. I think it's a classic. Everybody should. You don't even need to read the volume 1 to be caught up. It gives you all what you need, but it does make you kind of want to go back and read War Dogs and the volume 1 of this, just to find out exactly what happened on Apocalypse, that Darkseid has lost his control of it.
Right. And I would say, like I said, I felt like this was the greatest fit of Kirby's style. I mean, you saw medieval King Arthur, you saw dinosaurs, you saw ancient Rome, you saw the future, which, I'm sorry, a Darkseid Las Vegas was something I didn't know I needed to see, but that was.
Yep.
That
was very cool.
Yeah, it was very nice. And what I liked is that all the stories were very distinct, like beginning, middle, end.
Yeah.
And
and you used up each one of Darkseid's
odds.
Yeah. It worked perfectly, I think.
Yeah. And the ending had things you would expect. I mean, of course,
you're gonna have to deal with, it is 1980s, so it's not today's terminologies all through it. But I think it gives you a great look at what Jack Kirby did with using Third World or is it Fourth World? Yeah.
Well, Jeremy,
and the heroes of today.
You had mentioned with Paul how there are a lot of these circles, how the layout.
Yeah.
Even this here, it's like all triangles. Very creative. Certainly different than we see in a lot of common comic books today.
Yeah, well, today you get mostly the square panels, maybe like 12 or 13 panels to a page. Tom King uses it very well, but you don't get these circular panels, diamond panels. Some are cut diagonally through it. It's
Jeremy, you're referring to what's essentially the Watchmen novel.
Closer to the mic, Drew. Can't hear you, buddy.
Yeah, so Dave Gibbons would have 6 panels in each page, and he would do like a grid. So 2 to 2 to 2 to 2, and if he needed more, but they were very much set. So Kirby, being the creative he is, he had no problem using that, and all the space is fantastic. But I do agree with you, Rich. It's very a Kirby book. I mean, is the movements, all the stuff.
Yeah, like Paul said, this was the last regular monthly series that he did in his career.
Yeah, I mean, it was wonderful. But like I said, I feel like it's a bit of a forgotten gem, but it's still a real testament to his storytelling. He was great. I also loved, the humor in it. Like I love you got them teaming up with the New York Cop, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you sure?" He's like, "Listen, I've been a police officer 20-some years. I've seen it. Like there's like no dinosaurs in the subway. That's a project.
Oh, even Superman taking shots and was just like, I ain't got extra time. What are you talking about?
Or Superman won't kill me the lions. He's like, no, you can't take it over.
Carrie, what was your perception?
I kind of, I was, sorry, when I was talking when we had Paul on earlier, some of these characters were new to me. Not a lot of them, but like the Red Tornado.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was appreciative that he had explained like who people were a little bit more. But overall, it was fun, but it's not the normal comic that I would read. I mean, it's darker, but I'm just not a big Justice League fan in general.
Mhm.
But I did enjoy getting to know because I could read it and be like, oh, didn't know that about that character. And I do agree with Jeremy as well with the way the panels are set up, like through here. It's neat to see because we don't get as much of that these days. So,
Very cool. All right, so if you had to rate it, Carrie, what do you think?
um, I'll give it a 3.75. Pods. How's that?
0.75 pods.
And for myself, I'm gonna. I want to say more for the appreciation of the Kirby art. I also, while I enjoyed the story, I felt like they probably could have tightened it up in like maybe 4 issues. I felt there was a little bit extra that wasn't necessary. So I'm going to actually give it a 3.85. It would have been higher, but yeah, just not quite the story punch that I wanted. Drew?
Yeah.
What was that?
For me, I'm going to go with a 4. I mean, the art is indistinguishably amazing. Like Kirby's style is a style that can only be homage and never replicated.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul's story is fun, and it's very indicative of an age where lengthy explanations were really more of the norm, which was great for newer readers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, would I recommend this to somebody? Sure, but it's not like required reading. So I think a 4 in terms of especially the story and a lot of it Kirby. All due respect.
Right. Jar Jar.
I would say the only thing I didn't like about it was that Desaad gave away his deception in like issue 2 or something like that. So
Sure.
I was just waiting to see for Desaad to screw everything up to see where we were ending.
Desaad has to stop talking out loud. He just keeps fucking about. The problem is yes.
Yes.
He has no inner
take over for us.
I was like, oh no, your play.
Yes, yours, Darkseid.
It's like,
no, but I would tell people if you want to know a little bit about Darkseid and a few of his lackeys, this is definitely a good way to get a glimpse into him. Steppenwolf,
Mantis.
Yeah, Mantis. Everybody's there.
Yeah.
So it's fun. I would give it probably a 4 as well.
Okay.
Although I also agree with Rich, it could have been a little bit more tightened up.
Yeah, maybe I'd say maybe more issue removed. Like you could have done it if you really needed it, in my opinion. Like maybe we didn't need the future of Vegas. Like cute, but it wasn't really necessary because it's
yeah.
Oh, this is the future. We don't stop Darkseid. Oh.
I do like how they gave Batman the parademons to deal with. I was just like, all right, at least he's not dealing with Steppenwolf or something like that. I'm like, oh god.
Yeah, but then there was the one comment by Robin. Robin's like, "Oh, these guys aren't much tougher than thugs that we fight in Gotham." I'm like,
They're parademons.
They're parademons. Are you kidding?
I was just confused with Aquaman all the time. You can only be out for an hour. How long has it been? You know, it's like, why don't you just
And
carry
then he's
around a
going to perish
mister
the
or
whole rest of the
something?
time if he's not back in water.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
gonna travel into another dimension where we don't know if there's water or not. Come on, let's go. You have 15 minutes. We'll find something. I'll spit on you.
yeah. And on that note,
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
wrap this bad boy up, Carrie.
wrap it up, Carrie.
All right. So, if you guys want to find me, I am here a lot these days. I will be generally on Splash Pages and Midweek Geeks with these guys on tomorrow night, Wednesday nights, over here at the Dorkening. And otherwise, I'm over at the Owlite Network as well. We're doing things mostly on Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. So I have a kind of a busy week these days. Check me out, Carrie Sanders, on Facebook. If you see a crow, that is me. All of my links are there. And heading over to Velvet.
Hey, it's your man Velvet J. As you know, Rich Davis here on Facebook. And you can also find me on YouTube as Velvet Joker and TikTok and all these places where I'm creating content to disseminate nerd stuff to you guys. Because I love you. And I love nerd stuff. And I love doing it. So I'm going to keep doing it. So we'll see you soon. Oh, and we're going to be off next week. So week off, and then we'll be back, and it's going to be a busy end of the year. A lot more interviews. We're stepping it up, baby. Yeah.
Jar Jar.
Hey, I'm going to try to remember all of this. So this weekend, I'm going to be in Virginia Beach at the
Nice.
Tidewater Horror Convention, hanging with all of Still Token and Leo Pond, who is not here with us tonight. And then if you want to hook up with me, check me out on Facebook as Jeremy Courtney. And also check out Comic Book Lovers Buy, Sell, Trade, and Auction to buy, sell, trade, and auction your geek stuff. And Splash Pages every Tuesday here on Facebook and YouTube. And then, Still Token tomorrow night at 7 p.m. on Facebook or YouTube. And then Midweek Geeks at 9 to 10 or 9 till whenever. And then the re-education of Nancy Ann Ritter, the new episodes, the very first episode will drop next week, I'm pretty sure.
Nice.
So look out for the announcement.
Yes.
And Drew.
Drew Marlowe.
I'm dying, but when I'm not dying, I enjoy being here every Tuesday with these lovely people. And we have a lot of great things coming up. So if this is your first time, stick with us. You're going to enjoy the ride. And if you're still here, well, thank you, God. I'm on social media. My name on Facebook, it's Man 1984, because I still can't change it because I don't want to. I do things. I might be on Screen Rant. I don't know. I'm tired, and I feel like I'm always dying, but I love you. It was a great show.
All right. And on that, thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks for watching.